I've been really locked in on the draft lately. I wonder what kind of backup quarterback rumors there are for the Vikings. Oh my God. Really?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Today, I want to round up everything that I could find about the Vikings' backup quarterback situation. It's like the most pressing non-draft thing going on for the Vikings right now. We'll go back to draft stuff soon. Don't worry about it. I am deeply annoyed that I'm going to spend a segment talking about Kirk Cousins on April 13th, 13 days away from the draft. But apparently that's where everything is right now. So here's what I want to do. Look, I'm annoyed by it, but that doesn't mean that if you are genuinely wondering what the deal is, that I'm not going to answer your questions. So I'm going to give you what I think is happening in the rumor mill, why we're hearing about this, and why it is just it's not going to happen, y'all. It's not a thing. It's not going to happen. And I'll give you those dynamics, and then we'll go over some other more reasonable backup options later that are still out there on the market as guys like Drew Lock or whoever continue to get picked and plucked off the market. There are currently, by the way, 5 teams left that have fewer than 3 quarterbacks on the roster. The Vikings are one of those teams. And those teams all, with the exception of the Vikings, have a backup quarterback that they feel good about. If you count for the Steelers, Mason Rudolph as their backup and not their starter, which is the way it works right now. But obviously, we all kind of expect Aaron Rodgers to end up there. So that will kind of click one of these off. And then the Bengals, happy with Jake Browning. The Patriots got Josh Dobbs. And the Dolphins have Zach Wilson. So all of those guys have true blue backup quarterbacks. The Vikings are the last team to get a backup quarterback, which means everybody else that's out there, every other option that's available to them is kind of exclusively available to them. And I think that they knew that it would be like this, that even though they're the last team to get there, they still kind of have their choice between guys. These aren't, exciting names, but guys like Easton Stick, CJ Beathard, Carson Wentz, Desmond Ridder, pick your draft bust, right? So that's all still an available option. But really, we're talking about, people are starting to talk about Kirk Cousins. And the reason for this, the person whose fault this is, I blame Alec Lewis. This is your fault. You should be ashamed of yourself. So Alec Lewis tweeted this weekend that his read on the backup QB situation. Ryan Tannehill, who came in for a visit, is an option, is repped by the same agent as JJ McCarthy. He's also maybe not necessarily willing to go somewhere where he doesn't have an actual chance to start, but could be on speed dial if JJ McCarthy gets hurt, right? Which is also sounds like the same thing that they told Aaron Rodgers. Hey, don't wait for us. But if you're still on the market and JJ McCarthy gets hurt, maybe we'll give you a call. It's that kind of thing. But you're signing these guys right now. Brett Rippon's the only other quarterback on the market. And the compensatory formula is a major part of the calculus. Certain players that are unrestricted free agents that would count toward the compensatory formula won't count toward the compensatory formula if you wait till after the draft to do this. So that could be the holdup as well. Okay, there's your previously on for the backup QB job. So what's this Kirk crap? Well, Alec also said that he believes Kirk would come back. I'm reading directly. But Atlanta would have to be willing to move him at a feasible price. And we've already hit the first big snag here. So, of course, Kirk Cousins would love to come back and be the Minnesota Vikings quarterback. That went great for him. That went way better for him than it did for the Vikings. I think everybody can kind of agree on that. He got paid great. He was the guy for 6 years, and the Vikings just sort of sputtered and went nowhere for 6 years. That said, at this phase of Kirk Cousins' career, he'd be coming in to be the veteran backup. The first time we heard about this came from Daniel Jeremiah, who just floated the idea. He was just speculating. It was not a report of any kind. He was just I don't know, Kirk Cousins would make sense. He knows the offense. And that was his whole point, was that Kirk Cousins knows the offense, therefore it's a fit. And it kind of didn't get any deeper than that, which feels like a fairly easy dismissal. Is just a thing a guy said on TV or was it on a podcast or wherever it was. So I feel like you can dismiss that. And then Alec Lewis brings this up as, yeah, I think he would be willing to come back. Okay, great. So a lot of people want to play for the Vikings. They don't all get to. This is the pattern of this offseason. Everyone wants to play for the Vikings. The Vikings don't want everybody to play for them. And they just had this situation with a much better quarterback than Kirk at this point in Aaron Rodgers. I still feel like I can say that. At least Rodgers didn't get benched this year. And, said no to that, right? But hey, as a backup, maybe you could get there. Here's the problem. I don't see a value world where this works at all. Because of Kirk Cousins' contract, you will be unsurprised to learn that Kirk Cousins has all of his salary fully guaranteed for 2025, and salary will continue to guarantee throughout the life of his contract with big old roster bonuses and stuff like that. So there's a lot on this contract that is not very good. It is a 3-year deal that's difficult to get out of. Does that sound familiar to you? So the Vikings would have to take that on, or there would have to be some sort of agreement to void stuff out and for Atlanta to take on a whole bunch of the money. But the problem is Atlanta's already taking on a bunch of the money. So if they were to trade Kirk Cousins waives his no trade clause before June 1st, the Falcons would only save $2.5 million on this year's cap. And, they would take $37.5 million dead. That's without turning any of the other guaranteed salary away. The Vikings would then take on $27.5 million, and they would have to, at this point, start restructuring contracts or doing stuff to facilitate that. It feels kind of like a non-starter, not to mention you got to figure out what draft pick is actually going back for this guy, probably a day 3 pick if you're signing him as a backup. So do you want a $27.5 million backup? Do you want to have to start cutting guys so that you can pay your backup? Probably not, right? We can all be normal about this. Okay, but what if Atlanta does decide to take on a whole bunch of money? They're going to take on $50 million dead, or they do this after June 1st, where it gets a little bit easier to do. Another great reason to wait for everything, to make everything wait until after the draft. If they trade after June 1st, they would save $27.5 million in total. They would save the guaranteed salary the guaranteed salary. And move on from there. But the Vikings would still be taking on $27.5 million in fully guaranteed. They would also have $10 million fully guaranteed to deal with next year, a $35 million base salary, and a $10 million roster bonus. Kirk Cousins' cap number for 2026 is $57.5 million, and there is enough of it there, and 20 of it will be guaranteed by St. Patrick's Day next year. Enough of it to make you really have to think about paying him that. Maybe restructuring, paying it to him over time, but paying him that. This contract is god-awful for the Falcons, and it's the kind of thing the Vikings did not want to touch with a 10-foot pole last year, and it's the kind of thing that Kirk Cousins wanted, and the Vikings were like, no. So I don't know why the Vikings would give someone a draft pick to take this on. If anything, the Falcons, if they're going to want to get rid of this, are going to have to send a pick with it and Brock Osweiler this. This contract is an albatross. It is awful for them. Why would we give them that lifeline? Just because you can't think of another name? I don't think so. And truly, this is the way that my exposure to this has been. There was the one Daniel Jeremiah quote. I don't know. People say weird opinions on TV all the time. Didn't really register to me. And then Alec Lewis says his thing. Yeah, he would love to come to Minnesota. Yeah, I bet he would. None of those things really tripped any alarms for me. But every time a backup quarterback signs somewhere, Joe Flacco or Josh Johnson recently, for example, Drew Lock recently re-signing with the Seahawks, I have seen someone spin that into another backup QB's off the market. Could the Vikings be waiting for Kirk Cousins just to get you whooped up? So I wanted to do this and get you calmed down, because this ain't happening. Just makes no sense. The Falcons would either have to be willing to eat $80 million in dead cap. They'd have to send you draft picks back And the Vikings are not, I think, in a place where they're going to want to like take on all that money just to like turn it into draft picks. Give that to some other like, full rebuild team like the Patriots, which I actually love this for them. Or the Vikings would have to like delusionally bring in Kirk Cousins and think that like this is going to be, they're like, let's do 3 more years of that just after declining to do that last year, even if you somehow still believe in this guy. It's over is the answer. It's over for Kirk. I'm sorry. It's done. Everybody wants to get rid of him, and his contract is a disaster that the Falcons are probably just going to have to like take on the chin. So instead of trying to get involved with that and get all whooped up about the name we know, why don't we actually try to figure out where the Vikings options lie? And I'll lay it all out for you, and you can tell me what kind of option you actually feel good about. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Hey, did you know that if you have an Amazon Fire Stick, it's also an Xbox? You don't need to actually have an Xbox. You can actually just grab a paired controller and subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and then play games like EA College Football 25, Call of Duty, Avowed, whatever it is, just as easy as you stream your favorite shows. With 4K streaming and all those games, you can be endlessly entertained, and it's an easier thing to travel with than a big old honking console if you want to bring that to, over to a pal's house or bring it on a trip or something where you or maybe your kids can have that available to you to enjoy on some downtime. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd gen. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, you can go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Get some real X's and O's. Okay, enough of this speculation and rumor mill crap, sifting through various slop articles that were probably written by ChatGPT, and instead actually get some good beef, some good protein in your diet, and watch me break down whatever sense I can make of Marcus Embo, the tackle out of Purdue, who a lot of people think could move to guard or center, could be an option for the Vikings. Completely insane player. No idea how to make sense of him. You can watch him break my brain. Okay, so if we can kind of set Kirk aside as not an option, just a stupid thing that is SEO friendly, so people are going to write about it. One other thing I forgot to mention too, it's been reported that Cousins does want like a true starting gig. He doesn't want to like compete for it. So, and probably wouldn't find that in Minnesota. So there's another kind of deadbolt on this thing. So instead of doing that, let's examine what would even the advantages of that be? And is there anyone else we can get that from that doesn't come with this insane baggage of this god-awful contract, and also just the baggage of bringing back like the former kind of, franchise QB of the Vikings, just to like immediately put weird pressure on your second year QB that you've spent the entire offseason gassing up, which is again like bears mentioning in any kind of backup QB situation. Kevin O'Connell has been pretty clear that this is going to be J.J. McCarthy's job. Kwesi has been pretty clear about it. The Wilfs have been pretty clear about it. And before you come at me with this, remember that one time they said they didn't want to trade Percy Harvin thing from 12 years ago? For one, come up with a new example. It's time. Okay, that thing is almost ready for braces. Like, you got to get with it. It's graduated elementary school, that quote. But two, this has been an incredibly honest regime of the Vikings. Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, you go back to like old press conferences where they were asked about things that they couldn't talk about yet because they hadn't happened. They've been pretty forthright as you can expect someone to be. So I have a lot of pretty good reasons to believe them. But even if you don't want to take them on faith, we can look at, why would anybody even say, oh, cool, yeah, Kirk Cousins, what a great idea. Well, the main reason is the thing Daniel Jeremiah said back in March. He knows the offense. He's got experience. He knows the offense. And that's it. That's as deep as this take goes, right? So is there anybody else that knows the offense out there? Does anybody else in the NFL know A McVay-style offense? Have we heard of that before? Like, it's ridiculous to me to think that, like, half the league runs these offenses, okay? This is not going to be, you know, this is not some kind of, like, specially innovative rocket science. On defense, hey, they know Flores' system is actually because Flores is running something that's unique across the league. The Vikings do not run a unique offense. The way they deploy it has its own, you know, special place, the way that anybody's does, but they're not running a playbook that has anything different. If they grabbed somebody off the Rams or off the Seahawks or off of any other NFC North team, the entire NFC North runs the same like language. And well, maybe not Ben Johnson anymore, but like everybody runs this stuff. So that's nothing. But like, if you want a guy who like knows the offense, here's something for you. Let's look at the Seahawks situation. They got Sam Darnold. They have Drew Lock, Sam Howell, and Jaron Hall. One of those guys is getting cut. Maybe two of those guys are getting cut. So if you're okay with that, you know, somebody that like went in the 5th round a couple years ago in Jaron Hall coming back, he knows the offense, right? Or Sam Howell was potentially a person of interest in the draft a couple years ago. Or going back to Alec Lewis's read on the QB situation, that a day 3 pick swap or something like that could be in play. You can look at a team that maybe is about to draft a quarterback like the Tennessee Titans, who still have 3 quarterbacks on the roster in Will Levis, Brandon Allen, and Tim Boyle. Now, I'm pretty sure Kevin O'Connell thinks thinks very lowly of Will Levis, so I'm going to set him aside, evidenced both by the fact that, you know, the whole team deferred to him in the 2023 draft, and they passed on him. And there were some quotes that felt like they were about Levis, about like, yeah, there were certain guys I just said no to. But Brandon Allen, there is a guy that's been all over the league, absolutely has experience in this kind of system, and has been around. Tim Boyle also very much has been around, and one or both of those guys is probably getting cut on cut down day. So you could push this all the way to then. And to be honest, all of those ideas don't sound as good to me as just letting Brett Rippon have this job, maybe making him compete with a rookie or somebody in the draft. So if you want to trade for somebody, here's one idea that I actually really like. The Bills, after Josh Allen and Mitchell Trubisky, have Shane Buechel and Mike White. Again, one of those guys is getting cut, and throwing them a 7th in 2026 for Mike White actually feels like a pretty good idea. Mike White's definitely been around the league. He's shown prowess as a backup. He's shown that he can pop in and, you know, limp you through a game and even keep you in it, give you a chance to win it. So I actually would really love that idea. And the Bills seem pretty satisfied with their starter and their backup. So Mike White seems like a totally superfluous player there. Or the Vikings could turn to the draft themselves. Again, there's only 5 teams in the league that don't already have 3 quarterbacks or more on their roster. So day 3 of the draft, I don't think these quarterbacks are going to be a hugely hot commodity. One idea that we floated in on the Minnesota Football Party was Will Howard out of Ohio State, a guy I haven't watched super closely. I'm not going to go through all like the day 3 quarterbacks this year unless the Vikings draft one. But from what I've seen watching Will Howard, when watching like guys he's playing defense against or something like that, every time I look at him, I don't hate what I'm seeing. Okay. So call that like a 10% of a complete thing, but we're off to a good start if we wanted to actually pop in and evaluate somebody like him. But if you don't like Will Howard and you're not with me, that's fine. Go for your Quinn Ewers. Go for your whoever else. Tyler Shaw, that's a popular one, a very experienced quarterback out of Louisville, although I kind of say that with a tinge of backhanded compliment. So there's options there in the draft, but if you do want to wait for this in the draft, you could wait all the way till cut down day. You could bring in a rookie, compete with Brett Rippon and call it, right? And Kwesi did have nice things to say about Brett Rippon as well. Again, you decide if you want to believe how sincere he is with all that stuff, right? Everybody comes on the podium and gasses up their players, and plenty of GMs have come up on the podium, gassed up a player, then cut that player. But what we don't need to do is turn to poorly thought out, kind of half-baked ideas just because they're names we recognize from maybe being good before. We don't need to do that. If we want to actually try to predict what the Vikings were due, or better yet, come up with ideas that are actually good, then we probably need to think a little bit harder. But I do think it's totally fair to ask the Vikings why they're the last team in the league to get their true backup quarterback, unless that guy is Brett Rippon. So let's talk timeline next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by the 2025 Nissan Armada. The Armada Player of the Week is a week we're looking at all of our favorite draft prospects and giving you a guy that stands apart. So the Armada Player of the Week is going to be somebody I already mentioned on the show. It's going to be Will Howard today. All right. Reliable, steady Eddie, and somebody that can get you out of a jam. And that is the kind of energy I'm looking for here with the Armada Player of the Week. He's out here and ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Moving along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. So what is the gosh darn holdup? Why haven't the Vikings given me my backup quarterback back in March when everybody else did it? I think it's a valid question. Maybe not even a question, maybe just a critique. They should have done this faster. Now they're stuck picking up the scraps. So here's the market as it stands. We can look at any of the trade guys. Let's say trade for Mike White is the option. And if you want to think of a different option, and because you don't like the name Mike White and you'd rather say, well, why don't they trade for like Tommy DeVito? All right, sure. You sub in whatever name you want. Trade for whoever, right? Okay, that's one option. Then there's the free agent market. So again, the free agent market's pretty dry right now. But as I see it, the Vikings still have some options, right? And they're the last team. None of these guys are going now. Maybe they'll all join teams at some point, but everybody has at least a backup quarterback that they feel okay about, right? So if you want any of Desmond Ridder, Tyler Huntley, Teddy Bridgewater if he's still playing, CJ Beathard, Carson Wentz, or Easton Stick. As far as I can tell, none of those guys have signed. If I'm late to this or if they signed after this recording or something like that, my apologies. But you can have your pick of any of those. Any of those guys feel okay to you? Okay, great. Problem is not a problem at all. Certain guys like Carson Wentz that are total UFAs that are, weren't cut or whatever, that are compensatory free agents, you're going to want to wait till the draft. So that's part of it. That's the part of the holdup here. And one thing that people will do, extends well beyond sports, okay? This is like a conspiracy theorist move, is to see a coincidence and assume that there is a connection between those coincidences. They'll see that it rained and they'll see that the bus was late and they'll assume that the bus was late because of the rain. Well, you don't know that, right? It could have been because of a whole bunch of things. Maybe it was because of they were late, but you can't exactly bet your life savings on it. And I think that phenomenon has happened a little bit. Kirk Cousins is waiting until after the draft to decide whether or not to waive his no trade clause. The reasons for this are pretty obvious. If you remember the way that this was discussed last year, when Cousins signed with the Falcons, and then after they drafted Penix, this was a whole thing, if you were paying attention to that. Cousins did not want to compete with a rookie. He never wanted to compete with a rookie when he was in Minnesota. The Vikings had to call him when they were thinking about trading up for Justin Fields in 2021, and they had to be like, hey, we're thinking about doing this, BT Dubs, prepare yourself. Because they knew that he wouldn't have liked that. So they were trying to be upfront with him about it. And then the Vikings were again upfront with him in the O'Connell-Kwesi era when they were trying to renegotiate a contract for him to return in 2024. Remember that whole saga? And they were like, yeah, we're going to draft a guy no matter what. So add that to your calculus. And Cousins rejected whatever offers were on the table and went to Atlanta, where he thought they weren't going to draft a guy, and then was blindsided when they did. Truly blindsided. All of the reporting was like, yeah, he was really surprised and they never told him anything. So that relationship was really sour off the bat. And now he's looking for somewhere where he can start. Well, my dude is not going to go somewhere where he's competing with a rookie, right? Again, deadbolt on this. He's not coming to the Vikings. Shut up about it. But that's why he's waiting till after the draft. He wants to see where the quarterbacks go and make sure that he doesn't have a dumb rookie that he has to like compete with. He doesn't want to be a bridge. He doesn't want to be the Matt Flynn to someone's Russell Wilson. He doesn't want to be that forgotten footnote. He wants to start and be the guy for somebody. I don't know if anybody's going to let him do that, but that's his problem and Atlanta's problem, not ours. The Vikings are also waiting. They're probably waiting till after the draft to do this. It's almost certainly for compensatory reasons. That's been widely and very aggressively reported. And from multiple sources, from multiple angles, from everywhere. It's undeniable. The Falcons are also possibly going to wait until after June 1st to do this trade. The thing about trades, you can't designate a post-June trade like you can designate a post-June cut. You have to physically wait till after June 1st. So there might not be any movement there in Atlanta until after June 1st because of the way that it makes the contract and the money easier for Atlanta to take on some of the money. If a team doesn't want to take on that albatross of a contract and Atlanta says, okay, we'll take on some of the money just to get rid of him, then that might not be plausible to do unless they can do this after June 1st. And then they can do like restructures of contracts and stuff and like try to work it out. The rules are going to be a little different and maybe a little more favorable. So that's why the wait. Why the wait? Well, it depends on who's waiting. But what I won't do is this idea, and people did this with Aaron Rodgers too, that everybody's just waiting for each other, that we're all waiting to meet on the special day where we can announce the thing. No, they've all got their own reasons to wait for after the draft. And just because they are coinciding, it doesn't mean that they're related. You could even call it a coincidence. That was not good. And at the end of the day, I want to leave you with this. It is so emphatically J.J. McCarthy's team. Like it or not, right? There's uncertainty. Somebody was asking me, like, how can anybody be excited about the Vikings right now? They have a total question mark at QB. Well, a question mark is a lot more fun than what they've had for 7 years. This time last year, we were like dead certain we were going to have crap at QB because it was Sam Darnold. He hadn't done anything before. We were wrong. He proved us all wrong. Good for him. But like, there's way more to be excited about right now than the emotions of then. And then if you want to go back for the 6 years before that, everybody just expected the Vikings to go 500 with Kirk Cousins. And for the most part, they were right. It is J.J. McCarthy's team. They've been very clear about that. Unless there is a coordinated campaign to lie and to lie and to lie and to lie for the first time ever, to then go and do something that you actually could totally be talking about right now if you were thinking about it. I don't know. It feels like quite a big operation when the Occam's razor thing is they're just going to go with the kid. Maybe give Brett Rippon the job. Maybe have somebody come in to compete with him. Maybe have a guy on speed dial where if you don't want Brett Rippon to come in because somebody tore his ACL, then you call Ryan Tannehill. That feels like the situation to me. If I'm wrong, I don't know, come yell at me about it, but we'll if more reporting comes out, if an action comes out that proves me wrong, we'll talk about it. And we'll readjust the way we look at this and continue to analyze from there. Tomorrow is Town Hall Tuesday. Get your questions in. You can use the Google form in the show notes to get either a question or confess an anonymous hot take that I will read on the show. I'll take all the heat for you. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.